And there's another agenda here, and it's not to expose those responsible for elite paedophilia. When you then have a outcry about the ludicrousness of Butler Sloss's appointment by Home Secretary, currently Theresa May, and the next one installed is Fiona Woolf, Lord Mayor of London, who is a friend, seems to be a close friend, of Leon Britton's wife, friend too of Leon Britton, and lives in the same street as Leon Britton when Leon Britton is the star main witness of the inquiry into what the heck happened to that dossier, etc. Then you know, like I say, that the agenda is not to reveal the truth, but to keep the lid on it. What they're actually saying is we'll leave no stone unturned unless one of our people is underneath it. And then you have the situation where Leon Britton dies of cancer, and what is called, he died after a long battle against cancer. Well, why wasn't that mentioned when this inquiry was set up? Why wasn't it relevant when, because of the ludicrous nature of the appointees to head the inquiry, it was delayed and delayed and delayed, as people said, there's no credibility having this person or this person, so delay, delay, delay. Why was that not brought to the surface? Hey, this man is clearly in a late stage of cancer, as it turned out, if the cancer story is true, and yet there was no urgency to get him before anybody to be questioned, while they still could. Instead, he died, and with him, the ability to question him about what happened. Now, there was another guy who was head of the children's home, manager of the children's home, a guy called Stingemore, who was head of the children's home that was supplying children to be abused at a place called the Elm Guest House in London. And one of the people named on the list of abusers by people who were connected to Elm House was Leon Britton. One of the people exposing this says that he saw pictures of Leon Britton with naked children at Elm House on his knee. So, within a few days of each other, Stingemore dies just before he's supposed to appear in court to face charges, and then Britton dies before he can be questioned by the inquiry. And it turns out, after he died, when it was revealed, before he can be questioned by police about the raping of boys, about a boy being beaten to death in front of him, and other issues. And when you've been on the road of researching this subject for as long as I have now, it's another head shaker, because you're just seeing repeated the same methods and techniques of cover-up so it doesn't come out. And that's what we're seeing now, more and more blatantly. For those around the world who may not have seen as much of that story as we have in Britain, what has happened is this. Countries have been bombed, manipulated into civil war, had their resources stolen, and their societies manipulated by the countries of the West who love freedom. And as a result of that, not surprisingly, who wouldn't, they have tried, with their families often, to make the perilous journey to what they believe is a new land of prosperity. This, for those at Calais, is perceived to be Britain. And so they have taken their lives and their families' lives into great danger, often, by crossing the Mediterranean in terrible situations and great dangers because of the craft they have been traveling on, orchestrated by ruthless, psychopathic people traffickers. They have then made this journey across Europe to Calais, and now they are trying, through whatever means they can, to get across to Britain. This has created fantastic disruption on both sides of the channel. Apparently, the last I read, some 6,000 lorries, trucks, have been lined up on the British side, which can't get through the hold-ups into Europe. Businesses are being disrupted, some no doubt destroyed, by not being able to get supplies and customers to their business because of all the hold-ups. And so what you have, as frickin' usual in the madhouse, is that two groups of victims of the psychopaths are having different consequences of the psychopathic actions. And then the psychopaths try to play the victims off against each other, so we might just ignore the cause of it. And so we have a situation this week where the British Prime Minister, the truly vacuous David Cameron, has been making speeches about the problem of swarms of people heading for Britain, and how he will not let them in, and he will deal with it, and we must be strong. No mention that that fricking arsehole, along with Obama and Hollande and all these other people, the French leaders of the time, have been fundamentally responsible for creating the problem now in need of a solution. And if you go deeper into the agenda, it's worth remembering this: manipulating and redirecting harmony is extremely difficult. What do you mean you want to change this and change that? Everything's fine. Go away. Manipulating chaos, manipulating fear, manipulating mayhem. Piece of cake. And does anyone really think that the psychopaths weren't well aware, especially those in the shadows that drive and puppeteer these Cameron, Obama, Bush puppets, that they never knew that as a result of what they'd done and are continuing to do in North Africa and the Middle East, that what is happening now in terms of migrants and dispossessed people was not the inevitable. But we must be diverted from these conclusions by stories like this. Calais migrant crisis. Cameron warns Britain is no safe haven. My goodness, he's so strong. Britain will become, or not become, because he's strong, a safe haven for migrants in Calais, David Cameron has warned after hundreds continued their attempts to reach the UK. The Prime Minister warned illegal immigrants would be removed from the UK as migrants told the BBC they remain determined to reach Britain. Mr Cameron was speaking after people gathered for a third night at fencing at the Channel Tunnel freight terminal. More than 3,500 people have tried to get into the tunnel terminal this week. And irony of ironies, or actually appropriately, Cameron was speaking in Vietnam, another country I recall that was devastated by the lovers of peace and freedom. Speaking in Vietnam, Mr. Cameron said everything that can be done will be done to make sure our borders are secure and make sure that British holidaymakers are able to go about their holidays. Woo, yay, good man. The Prime Minister acknowledged the situation was very testing. Well, the Prime Minister's very testing every time I look at him, because there was a, quote, swarm of people coming across the Mediterranean seeking a better life, but the UK and France were working together, just as they worked together to devastate Libya. Just as these people are working together to devastate Syria and other countries on a global agenda for which they are just puppets, not initiators. They're in the shadows. Another story this week. UK spent 13 times more on bombing Libya than it paid to help rebuild.